is my best kind of show notes because we didn't touch one of them, not even one of them. I'm not sure which one is Paul Rudd and which one is Lane Green.
Final card here is the ultimate outcome.
Today is Take Your Dog to Work Day.
Like Scooby-Doo.
Yeah. Without further ado, his debut.
Sweet Caroline.
Everybody say hello to Sammy. Is it not good?
I'm just pausing so that you just are at the front of your screen.
I'm so enormously flattered.
Branding is not a bad blind date.
I'm gonna have to take a picture of this.
No, this is agape. This is love.
I really enjoyed this. You did do your homework. You asked great questions.
I'm flattered. Thank you. You just made my day.
Look at you! You are insane!
How did I do that?
You're
How
insane!
did I do that?
You're insane!
Well, hello, everybody. I'm surrounded by my fellow males. I'm living in the past right now. Denial is not a river in Egypt. Discuss. Got Don Draper. Oh, there he is. And John Philip Rhodes III is saying, "Lo what? No. I don't think you meant to take the description of today's show too literally, my friend. Stick around, listen in. We're going to have a conversation, myself and Angus Nelson. He's a performance coach. You'll find out more about him shortly. We're going to be having a conversation about the role of men, males, masculinity, the evolution of that, what it is to be a father, what it is to be a husband, what it is to be a human. We're not just going to talk about that too. We're going to talk about always, mental health, mental wellness, mental strength, the mind's ability to govern the body and to propel us and project us forward with an aura of positivity, because this show is about hope, positivity, optimism, and if there's time left over, a little bit of marketing. That's just the way it is. So today is National No Rhyme Nor Reason Day. It is September 1st. Happy September, everybody. There are certain words in the English language that have no rhyming word, no rhyming equivalent. So that's what today is somehow designed, I don't know why, but to commemorate or to celebrate. So don't cheat, but paste in the comment section the words that you believe or know or aware of that have no rhyming equivalent. And as we go into the show, Angus, think about that as well. Give me your guess. Do not cheat, because all you have to do is go to Google these days. I think part of the message that you'll hear from Angus is sometimes put down the laptop, step away from the vehicle, step away from technology, and use your noggin. So a little bit of a riddle for you guys. And let's just see, let's see if you're right at the end of the day. So as I was saying to you earlier, today, Angus Nelson, he's a performance coach, an author, a speaker. I've known him for a while. James says orange. Orange, you a smart individual. Yes, orange is one of them. There are more. So I wonder what else comes up as well. Isn't it the knock knock? Who's there? Orange, orange who? Orange, you glad to see me? Well, I'm glad. I'm very glad to see Angus. And one question that I'm going to ask him is how long he's been doing this and why he decided to focus on being a performance coach to men. Why men? Why now? So I'm sure he'll tell us all about it. So tomorrow I have my friend, my ex-client, my co-author of Zero, Martin Obada. Here it is. I carry it close by me. Martin and I will catch up a little bit, and that's tomorrow. And then Warren Berger, who authored a beautiful question. And then finally on Friday, the audience becomes the actual show. So if you are enjoying CoronaTV, if you attend the after show, and become a bit of a regular, you get an invitation, a standing invitation to these monthly shows, and they're quite awesome. And so, stick around and listen in on Friday and comment and come to the after show of the after show of the show of the after show. I think you'll be glad that you did. And as I've been saying every day, if you want to get my weekly newsletter, which has all of my seated soliloquies, has my reflections on the week that was, but also a preview of the week that will be, all you've got to do is just subscribe by texting the word CoronaTV to 66866 or going to josephjaffe.com/subscribe. That's all you need to do. The newsletter, of course, is free. So happy birthday, Karen Schwartz and David Dworsky. Both of you are turning 50. I'm celebrating everyone because I'm turning 50 this year too. So, 50 not out, as we say in cricketing terms. And also to my good friend, Cynthia. Cynthia, we normally hang out at the ANA, but not this year. Or maybe we'll get to do something virtually this year. And of course, Steve Colson, I used to work with Steve back in the crayon days. So happy birthday to you guys. And of course, happy birthday to all my LinkedIn friends, contacts, colleagues out there. Well, today definitely is a strong dose of men. And that's what the seated soliloquy is about. It's about men. And I may as well start with, a little bit of a ditty. Do you remember this one? Men, 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 manly men, 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 manly men, men, men. I'll stop. Those, of course, are the lyrics from the hit sitcom 2.5 Men. And while I don't think I've ever watched an episode of the show entirety, I did watch Charlie Sheen go through his own personal sitcom until he was replaced by Ashton Kutcher. The role of men is not changing because it already has. And it is continuing to evolve amidst a woke or awakening world and the growing Me Too movement. In November of 2020, we will most likely be looking at the divided states of America's first female vice president. And in 4 years' time, if I'm a betting man, we will be looking at the Republican Party's first female presidential nominee in the form of Nikki Haley. But I digress. This isn't about politics. The purpose of this soliloquy is not to cry me a river regarding the poor plight of the endangered male species, but I do think it's important as a man to acknowledge the changes and to be honest about the challenges and natural tensions associated with letting go of certain norms, beliefs, social and cultural assumptions, and in its place, embracing a whole new set of rules and an organizing rubric. Like I said to my daughter today when we were getting acai bowls, I feel like it is my duty, my obligation, my responsibility as a husband and a father to protect my family, to earn a living, to provide for my family. But that said, if the roles were reversed, I'd be just as fine with that too. Why shouldn't it work both ways? Why couldn't it work both ways? Now, more than ever, we should all be talking about hopes and fears alike. We can agree with one another. We can disagree. We can agree to disagree. But whatever we do, there's no upside in bottling it in or berating one another when we let it out. The days are over, or soon will be, of male-dominated anything. And that's okay. Actually, it's better than okay. The evolved male will not resist, revolt, or grieve, but instead will find worth and self-worth in new, different, and other exciting ways. So be a part of the change, lead the change, or choose to cheer it from the sidelines, but don't worry, you won't be alone. You won't be alone again. Well, now it's time to bring on my guest and find out, I guess, what he thought about the seated soliloquy. I almost said the sleeted soliloquy or soliloquy. It's a little bit of a tongue twister. But the name Angus Nelson is not a tongue twister. Angus is the founder of Man of Wealth Performance Coaching. He helps high achievers and elite millennial entrepreneurs gain clarity, maximize connections, and achieve goals even faster. He co-hosts the podcast Studio CMO and is the host of Up in Your Business. And Angus, if you're ever looking for a guest, I'm always available. He's an avid coffee drinker and aficionado of all things human behavior, Green Bay Packers, and nachos. And he is my guest on the show today. And I thought, just for a little bit of extra, I'm going to share with you his sizzle reel.
You are worthy.
Angus, he empowers, enlightens, educates, motivates. He inspires us so much.
You have to have a passion for your customer. And as much as you think you're awesome, they don't care.
I love you, Angus.
Angus Nelson has an infectious spirit that takes over the stage and motivates audiences.
He was insightful, charming, he was vulnerable.
So that's what I want to talk to you about, is the statement of worth. The value not only that you offer, but the value you provide for your customer. Who? Opportunity, relationship, thinking, heart. This is the premise of your entire company. Why? Your worth creates your work, and when you put your work into your worth, you make the work worth doing. Never forget, your statement of worth is that you are worthy.
Welcome to the show.
I'm ready for like a crowd going, So
well, you're getting some good input as well. John Philip Rhodes III is giving you some advice on color palettes as well, which is good. You know, it's always good to get some advice as well. And pastels are chill too. So there you go. But that's, you know, I love those sizzle reels because, you know, in fact, here's a little hint to anyone who wants to come on the show. If you have a nice sizzle reel, I'll play it. You know, I'll give you a little bit of promo. Why not? if you put in the time and the effort and the budget into it, the least I can do is play it. But it should be short, right? Yeah. About a minute or so. And yours is a minute.
Yeah, and that was super intentional because how many of us have seen sizzle reels where it's like 4 or 5 minutes and it just drags and drags, but really all it is to start a conversation. And so you want to punch people with, you know, some kind of a thing that represents your personality and your brand, but also your message. And so throwing our heart into that, obviously, I hope that kind of echoes, is because a lot of the stuff we're going to talk about today is some of the stuff that I discovered about sales and marketing as it started with psychology and understanding how people think. And then the more I got into that, I started to work with corporate executives who, you know, had gone to these great schools, they're working at these great companies, and they're making great money, but so many of them were just miserable. And I found myself on calls with them, supposed to be talking about innovation and all these different elements of their enterprise, and ended up instead like coaching and cheerleading and listening. And I eventually found out like that's a thing. And it's kind of become my superpower. It's part of what I do. And so I work mostly in business to business technology marketing. And I obviously incorporate a lot of this psychology and how we do our messaging and, you know, buyers journeys, et cetera. But at the same time, like this is my passion is to help move people, and specifically men, because we're in a season where that's a thing. That's really a thing. And we're going to dive into it today.
Yeah, well, it's raining men today because we've got, you know, Steve Garfield, I think he's gone from I'm manly men into I'm a lumberjack and I'm okay. I sleep all night and I work all day. And then, you know, Joey is like, you know, I dress in women's clothing and hang around in bars. Everybody now, I'm a lumberjack. Okay. So, you know, it's good to see that, you know, we can see the level of intellect and maturity of the people that watch CoronaTV, but you know, you never know where the conversation is going to go. So I'm going to keep it on this slightly light-hearted level because we're going to find out a few fun facts about you, Angus, and there are some interesting ones. So here is a very interesting one. I don't know that you know that I got this picture of you. It's one of the unreleased photos from your time. You spent 2 months in the Soviet Union in 1991, and 2 weeks after you left, tanks rolled into Red Square. Now, were they looking for you is the question.
Oh, goodness. Yeah, I think they were looking for Gorbachev. Yeah, that was a whole different world back then, right?
Now, do you know whose body your head is actually on, by the way?
I don't.
If you look carefully.
I don't know who that is. Is that you?
No, that is Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Oh my gosh, Planet Hollywood. Well, that makes sense.
At least, you know, I think it is. Here's something else about you, which is you basically just, you know, upped your family and sold your house, I believe. And when was this? About like 10 years ago, and moved to Aruba.
Yeah, so this was 2014. I was working for a company that, kind of like we were talking about before, was all looking at innovation. And coming out of 2008, 2009 was this element of the sharing economy and Uber and Lyft and all these peer-to-peer type of endeavors. my wife and I had a conversation and said, why don't we just leverage this? Let's go drink our own champagne. And so my job was based in San Francisco. So all I needed was Wi-Fi and an airport. And so we sold our house, and every month we were in a different city, from San Diego all the way across the South, one stint up in Wisconsin to see my family, and then even Aruba. So we spent a month in Aruba. It was amazing. And so, yeah, we lived this kind of, lifestyle of taking the adventures and kind of living wild and free and making up our own rules.
So, what's interesting to me, and I'm sure you've seen this as well, it's been doing its rounds on Facebook, that the country of Bermuda is offering a certificate to people like you and me where we can live and work in Bermuda. And I think there's some tax-free exempt status. Yeah. I mean, how's that for a little bit of marketing, saying, why don't you, given where we are in the world, there are worse places to live than on the island of Bermuda. So you might have been ahead of your time, like in terms of going to Aruba, but that's kind of interesting. I'm thinking about it. I won't lie. I mean, I don't think my family knows that yet. Maybe I'll go by myself. But that's cool marketing, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. And, one of the contexts too, obviously to a millennial generation, that's something that they're all about for sure. But in terms of where we're at in the season of life, it's really caused us to ask, what do we really want? And can we give ourselves permission to go after it? And that's a lot of the stuff that I talk about in my coaching, is understanding that this life does not have to fit in this context or this box that the world has given us from either a cultural norm or from a societal norm, or even just from the way you were raised. We watch these different patterns and then we assume that that's the only pattern that exists. And kind of like for us, I think it's for so many people that are examining now, we've always been adventurers. We've always kind of made up our own rules. We always wanted, as a family, to kind of be outside the box, not out of a rebellious thing, but we just knew there was more. In the same way, I think that COVID has caused people to say, what do I really want in relationships? What do I really want out of my job? What do I really want out of life? And people are making decisions that they otherwise, though they had wanted to pursue, they never took the action to execute. And this has given us this moment of reflection and this moment of seeing what really matters and realizing that life is short. And so people are engaging in getting out of large cities to move out when their company gives them the green light, says, hey, you can work remote. And they're like, see ya. All the mortgages, or excuse me, the rents in New York City, a lot of them have dipped as much as 30% because so many people are leaving New York City. And
you can't get, you actually can't get a mover. A moving company in New York City. There's like a 2 to 3 month backlog. But I think there's a word, an overwhelming word, when we think about, I don't know, humans, but certainly I know we're discussing men today, and that's pride. The inability, the proudness to be able to say, I messed up, I made a mistake, I don't have all the answers. I'm not coping. I've lost my ability to do all of these manly responsibilities, look after my family, take care of my spouse and my children. Why is pride such a dominant factor in terms of holding men back, or does it have nothing to do with men? Is it something that men and women alike, kind of suffer from, or at least struggle with equally?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of and both. I don't know that our culture has paid us a lot of favors in the context of how we were raised, at least our generation for sure, where people weren't allowed to make mistakes and they weren't allowed to show weakness. I remember, years ago, it's funny you said something about being a man ahead of your time or something like that. In many ways, I kind of feel that way because I was talking about vulnerability back in 2009, 2010. And that wasn't a cool thing. It wasn't until Brene Brown kind of came on the scene and she really, ignited that conversation, front and center. And I think there's a context of that. As men, we struggle exactly. You were bang on is there's ego. There's these elements of fear that we're not allowed to identify. And so we walk around with a constant sense of anxiety oftentimes. And we carry this weight of the world on our shoulders, thinking that we've just got to muscle this through, that we just got to wear it on our shoulders, that we just got to go it alone. And we don't give ourselves permission to ask for help. And that was part of my story. My first business that I started back in 1998 was an organization that my brother and I started. It was a nonprofit organization. And we made some mistakes early on. We got under some financial strain. And so I wanted to prove to everyone that we could turn this thing around. As the executive director, I got this. And I didn't go to my board. I didn't go to other people for help. I just started working 60, 70, 80, 90-hour work weeks. And I was killing myself, trying out of pride, out of ego, out of narcissism to prove it could be done. And I ended up having to cope with that pain. I chose all the wrong things. It started with alcohol, and then it was porn, and then I was sleeping around. And within short order, I lost my business. I lost my my marriage. I went through a divorce, and I lost my self-worth. I spent the next 3 years trying to put Humpty Dumpty back together again, so I know what it's like as a man to apply all the wrong things in all the wrong places. And so now I've made it kind of my mission, as I've started to observe this becoming more and more commonplace, is that men are self-destructing because they don't have the permissions to have emotional intelligence. And it's not because they don't have the permission. They just haven't given themselves the permission. They don't understand, mindfulness and mental health. They don't understand the liberties and the freedoms of asking for help and seeing that you can delegate. Oftentimes I work with high performers, and they're so capable, they spin up more and more ideas, and then they end up becoming the bottleneck of their company. And what they don't realize is they haven't delegated a lot of that authority to other people. And so they become the crux of their own success. And they say, well, I'm surrounded by a bunch of followers. There's nobody here that leads like I do. And it's like, well, how would you know if you've never given the opportunity to lead? They're actually screaming for opportunities to take ownership of parts of your company. And what if you could let go of that and delegate and watch these people around you shine in their leadership? Watch them explode with enthusiasm and accelerating their own growth of the company, because now they get a part to play. And maybe your life could be easier. And now, instead of you trying to manage the day-to-day and all the minutia, you could rise above and see 30, 40,000 feet and get a vision of the future of your company and iterate over all the uncertainties into creating your company in a position that can be successful for what's to come. Like, these are the things that men are contending with.
First of all, I'm humbled by, and I appreciate you sharing that personal story with me and with this audience. It seems so, sad. I feel sad for you that you had to go through all of that in order to discover yourself and in order to figure out how to move forward. Yeah. Was that necessary? Did you need to go through all of that? How do you prevent yourself from spiraling down and spiraling out of control in order to have this moment where you can actually see things clearly, maybe for the first time?
Yeah. So the first part of your question is, do you have to go through this? I don't think you do. I don't think we have to live our lives always learning our own lessons. The greatest wisdom is to learn lessons from those who have already learned them. And as a coach, this is part of my practice, is showing you the roads and the paths that you don't yet see. You think you got it under control. You think it's supposed to look like this, but what you don't see are the steps 3, 4, 5 down the road. You don't see the continuum down that line that you're walking. And if you follow the lines of continuum where, like, for instance, you look into the mirror and you're wrestling with the man that you see. You don't like, where he's at in life. You don't like the marriage that he's maintaining or scrapping together. You don't like the way that he's leading his company or his parenting. You see him as being aggravated all the time or irritable. And that man that you're seeing, you think, gosh, that guy, what a jerk. And you don't like you. And you follow down the lines of the continuum and you start asking yourself, and this is a very subconscious psychological thing, is why should other people like me? and you start self-sabotaging things in your future, whether it be in sales, whether it be marketing in your company, or it be personal relationships. And so guys get to this place where they feel lonely. They feel like they're all by themselves, even though they're surrounded by people. All because they start at this root and don't understand how that relates to all these other elements. They haven't gotten to a place of feeling fulfillment and satisfaction from who they are and what they're about. They're so convinced that it's about what I do that earns me my value, instead of understanding it's who you are. Who is the man you need to become in order to do these things you want to do? It's not about the achievements. It's about the transformation. And this changes everything. We went really deep, really fast right there. I put a pause because I didn't want to go further.
But you know what's funny also is you kind of, you know, kicked this off as well and almost led with this intensity, and I almost felt bad to have to, like, you know, bring it back to the frivolous, the irreverent and the sublime.
Yeah.
But I actually think that's part of it, right? Part of it is not to take yourself so seriously. And look, and we've known each other for a long time. I'm you know, quite impressed and surprised, all good things, in terms of you've gone through a transformation. I think I understand why now. But when I met you, you were, you know, it was probably in one of the Carolinas. Maybe it was with Mr. Phelps. Stan Phelps, but you were like in custom experience, and you were like so like same intensity but channeled differently. Maybe is the best way to describe it. So you still have the intensity, but I almost feel like it's I'll just go on a completely different tangent. I've been people told me I have to listen to Ben Shapiro, just to get a perspective from the other side of the aisle. Yeah. And I'm listening to this guy, and 50% of what he says, I'm trying to find the truth, the validity, the substance, and then there's some merit clearly to 50%. And 50% of the stuff, it makes absolutely no sense and is absolute crap, And all I'm thinking to myself is, I want to send him a tweet going, if only you used your powers for good. Like, you have power. Why not use them for good?
Yeah.
And I almost feel like you have taken that same intensity, but you're channeling it very differently. And I see a change in you insofar as the Angus that I knew before versus the Angus now. It's almost, there's a liberation of sorts.
Yeah. It's a freedom, right? And when you get to this place where you have nothing to lose, nothing to gain, and nothing to prove, you have a quiet confidence about you, and you're not convinced that anyone else's opinion matters anymore. It's about who I see in that mirror. And it's about how I inspire my wife, my partner, how I inspire my kids, and how I inspire my friends, not because I'm trying to earn or achieve their love. It's that I inspire it. And I want to be that guy. And I want to make that stuff contagious. Part of the man of wealth element was this, the rhetoric of wealth, makes people like, oh, that's an aspirational thing. But the wealth is not always financial, because you and I both know people who have done really well financially, who are just miserable, who have gone through divorce, and they've sabotaged relationships, and they've sabotaged other things. But the money doesn't ever make you happy. But what if you could live a rich life? What if you had elements of your relationship that made you feel rich, elements of your physical nature that made you feel, wealthy and rich? And what if you had elements of your business that you could have that, like I said, that 30, 40,000 foot freedom. And now the success of your company isn't based necessarily on the revenue and the profits as much as it is the freedom and liberty that people who work under you feel. And you've let them be free to be themselves. And there's all these different ramifications that make someone feel rich. And that's the kind of life I want to inspire for men.
Yeah, I feel that a lot of men are lost at the moment. They and they are between a rock and a hard place. And that's why in the soliloquy I was talking about, do you embrace the change, and do you, lean into it, and do you go with it? It's almost like a current. You're in this in this current, but you can just, why fight it? Go with it, enjoy it, you know, work with it, move with it. And then of course there are others that that resist it or are too fearful to open themselves up. How are you finding your clients like coming to you? Look, which camps do they fall into initially? You know, are they the fearful type, the resistors, or are they the ones coming saying, hey, we get it, we know we need to change, we know we need to move with this change, we're just not quite sure how?
Yeah, great question. And by the way, this is so awesome. Just us having this conversation for men to come and have these kinds of exchanges, like kudos, like freaking awesome, right?
Thank you.
So the men that I mostly attract, the ones that I work with, already have success. It's not people who have bottomed out. It's not people who, you know, are starting at, you know, zero. Like, I'm not here to help pull people up from, you know, obscurity to try and become something, you know, monumental. There are people who follow me who are now aspiring to that, to get to that, and I'll lead the way and I will inspire them with content and stuff to get them there. But the ones that I work with from a coaching perspective have already had success in levels of their life, and they see success in one portion, but there's all these other pillars that they're not having success in. And that's the part that leaves them feeling like, I've got more in the tank, I'm capable of more. Like, there's just something that I am not connecting to that I wish I had a better perspective on. And I love what Gaping Void, you know, the characters and stuff like that. There's this one where Hugh had, the artist had created a jar, and he said, every one of us needs someone outside ourselves to read the label on our jar. And it's like, we all need somebody outside of ourselves to see our zone of genius, to call out of us our greatness, to identify the things that we're blinded to see in of ourselves. Because generally speaking, we mostly discount a lot of our gifts. And we don't give ourselves credit to embrace some of our strengths, or we're too afraid that if I step out, someone's going to want to tear me down, especially in this cancel culture, right? We were kind of talking about that before we came on. It's like, if I get bold enough to say some of the things I believe, I might get skewered. And so I built a whole alignment tool to help people kind of understand. And I'm sure we'll jump into that later, but it builds a level of generosity and a level of abundance and a level of collaboration to where you gather enough momentum of people around you. And now people want to cheer for you, and they want to help you, and they want to serve you to get those things accomplished that you see in your heart to achieve. That stuff becomes powerful. Hey, Karen, speaking of awesomeness, Karen O'Brien. So
yeah, thank you for coming over, and then for watching, Karen. There is another word. You know, I discussed pride earlier, but there's another one, and that is this idea of security, or I should say insecurity, and being afraid, right? And it's connected to fear, and being able to recognize that for every person that keeps it bottled in because they're afraid to open their mouth, you know what? There might be someone who does open their mouth, and then they get berated for it. So, you know, it doesn't, there's no, I mean, I'm sure you find this as well. There's no magic wand. There's no easy answer. The road is long, right? The road is squiggly. The road is bumpy. Sometimes there are mines, but this is the road that we have to, this is the road we have to take, you know, and it helps if we have a Sherpa. And it helps if we're not alone. But ultimately, you know, the only way is forward.
Yeah. And to have the word you use is Sherpa, that's one of the things that I kind of see myself as, is just kind of a guide. Some of my clients have said really crazy stuff. One in particular is like, Angus, you know how to navigate. I have a client who runs multi-million-dollar marketing company, and it's like, not about to help him with all of his business decisions, because I haven't been there. That's not the place I play. Where I play is right here between his ears, and I help him navigate. He said, Angus, some way, somehow, you know how to navigate uncertainty. And I took that as the highest compliment, because when someone who's in leadership has the humility to ask for help, they open themselves up to see from a different perspective. And I always like to say that humility is like looking at the same mountain as other people, but having the openness to take a step to the left or to the right to see a different perspective. Somebody told me once, they said, people's minds are like concrete. They're well mixed and thoroughly set. When you get to that place, you start limiting the opportunities for you to see clarity, for the opportunities to see objectively. And you need somebody else to kind of shake you up a little bit and like call you out on your BS and kind of help you see a different perspective. And then there's this other aspect where if you are in this place of openness, this place of yieldedness, you feel like my future and what I want to do, I want to learn. I take on a growth mindset. I start reading and studying and watching different things that are going to feed my soul, feed my mind. What happens is you start to rehearse a new identity. And internally, you start to see yourself from a different perspective. And when I work with my coaching clients, it's about transitioning the identity of who they see themselves to be and then rehearsing that both emotionally and using a power of visualization. And your brain, this is crazy psychology. I don't know how we got here, but we're going here. Your psychology, your brain always seeks equilibrium from its internal experience to its external experience. And so therefore, as the identity starts to transform and change and elevate, what happens is on the external, your brain clicks into gear and says, how do I manifest this? How do I make this happen? And you start carrying yourself on a different level, and you start engaging with people from a different confidence, and you start opening up opportunities because people see you in this new light. And whether it's, the power of attraction or if it's the power of creation, I don't know, but that's just naturally what happens. The opposite of that is this place of fear, this place of intimidation, this place of limiting beliefs. And we tell ourselves that story. We create that identity internally. Our brain seeks equilibrium. And now guess what? We create all that same fear. We create all of that same spiral of junk. And the chaos that's on the inside becomes the chaos on the outside. And that's why it's so critical that we have to nurture this part of us. Nurture that internal understanding.
What I really like about the conversation is that, this idea of a process, of a continuum, of a journey, that there's no quick fix. This isn't a button or a lever that you press on, off, masculine, feminine. It doesn't work that way. And it's, Jan actually asked, like, do you have a kind of a daily humility journal app more men could tap into, or would you ever? So, I think it's almost, but I like where he's coming from, this idea of chronicles and keeping tabs of the transformation.
Yeah. So I don't have a humility journal, but what I have is I have an exercise I do with my guys. I call it the 10-minute motivator. And what it is it goes through that series of affirmations and that series of principles that you apply to your life, because there's two directions you can go in your life. You can move towards something, or you can move away from something. And oftentimes when we're in a lack mindset, we're in the place of weakness or place of desperation, we're striving to get away from something. We don't want debt. We don't want a bad relationship. We don't want a bad job. We don't want a bad boss. And so that becomes a negative energy that's driving us. And so some people can perform at high levels just by a negative context, but it will hit a ceiling. The other thing is to move towards something, and you start making your decision towards the things you want. And so my 10-minute motivator is about moving people towards the aspiration of the person they want to be. So instead of setting goals, we set aside what are the kinds of achievements I want, and then reverse engineer that, say, what's the kind of man that naturally and organically creates those kinds of achievements. And then on daily practice, we start rehearsing who that man is. And now we start setting our intention to move towards that guy. And then effortlessly, we start achieving those goals.
Makes sense to me. Well, the other thing that you alluded to was this idea of a process, right? You call it your manhood matrix, and don't worry if people can't see that from that's the whole matrix. What I'm going to do is just zoom in and give you an opportunity to set this up, talk a little bit about it, and I'm happy to be a subject as well. If you want to use me, or if you want to ask me some questions, as best as I can, I'll try and answer them too. So I'll give you the floor, and I'll also give people a link where they can actually download this.
Sure. And so let's go down to the bottom here, because if you look at this, it's kind of like, I don't know if you have the ability to scroll down, but if you look at, Maslow's pyramid, that was kind of the emphasis for this, or the inspiration for this. And I looked at a acronym of manhood. And through my clients, I understood that there were different principles and layers of this process of getting to where you want to be. And the first thing is this element of mindset. And we hear a lot about it. It sounds woo woo, it sounds foo foo, it sounds, all these different things, but yet it's such a critical thing because, the Hebrew tradition would say, as a man thinks, so is he. We look at all the different things about, athletes and the way they see themselves. There's something about having what is called a killer instinct. They have a mindset. People in business, they have a mindset of success. So in that same context, if you look at the mindset element, it's like looking at, who do I believe I am? And what I experience is what I've chosen to accept. And now I take responsibility that the things around me, I'm actually allowing. Either I'm setting boundaries or not setting boundaries about the way that I'm contextualizing my life. And so the question you ask yourself is, are my habits, actions, and behaviors congruent with the vision I have for my life? I like to say, what you hear about, you think about, you talk about, and what you talk about, you ultimately bring about. So the seeds that are planted in our life, or you could say the data that's put into our computer, are all the voices and stories that we allow. And so right now, during all of this COVID and the politics and the disruption and the so many angry and upset people, and not to say that none of that stuff matters, but the volume you allow into your brain will contextualize a sense of self. And if you allow too much of it, you'll become powerless and fearful, and you'll come from this place of lack. And now all of a sudden you've sabotaged yourself from growth because your mindset is in a place that feels like a victim. That victim mentality will impact your relationships. Once you build upon that mindset, you get to this place of attitude. Do I believe the world is happening to me, or is it happening for me? Are circumstances happening in my life in such a way that they're giving me wisdom, insight, clarity? They're giving me advantages for my future. That's the difference between a lack mindset versus an abundant mindset. It comes from this place where you can be in a place of gratitude, a place of thankfulness for the things that happen in your life. So I can look back at my life and realize that some of those down times were some of the best things for me. And how do we know that some of these things we're being challenged with today in 2020 are not some of the catalysts for some of the decisions that are going to benefit us greatly for the future? You stack onto that this nature. The nature becomes, who am I? My identity. Is that my identity, and we were talking about this before, wrapped up in what I do or in who I am? And therefore, am I performing for the attention of others only to validate how I feel about myself? Because that's exhaustive. Versus the nature is getting this place of mindfulness and this place of owning my future and knowing that who I am is enough. And now you step into this place of humility where you finally see the world is bigger than you, that your gifts, talents, and skills have a place to play. And now the supply of the universe, however you see and contextualize that, is what is equipping you to now come to a place of contribution.
It sounds, each one, as you build on top of this foundation, is about letting go. And accepting your role in something bigger, where you're no longer the star of the show, where all the weight of the world isn't necessarily on you, but you have a role, and that role is a powerful, important role. Maybe a different analogy is you're a cog in the machine or in something bigger, and without you, maybe it doesn't function, but without any of those other cogs, the same is true as well.
Yeah. And this goes back to that place of collaboration and inspiring people to want to be a part of what you're doing. And again, not from a place of selfishness, but from a place of generosity. Because we'll finish these last three steps and let's dive into some deeper. So the quick hit is, now you observe the world around you and you start to see this element of self-awareness or emotional intelligence kicking in, into where you're almost in third person watching how you're engaging with people around you, whether you're talking to your partner or if you're talking to someone at work, and words come out of your mouth, and in the middle of the sentence you're like, oh my gosh, I am talking out of anger, I'm talking out of, can I just pause for a second, because that's not really what I mean, that's not what I want to say. And so that third person becomes powerful, into which case now you see where your gifts, talents, and skills can play in the world. Go ahead.
This is outside the jaw, right? This isn't thinking outside. This isn't thinking outside the box anymore. This is being able to project yourself outside the jaw, and it's almost like out of body, so to speak. But it is a degree of actualization or self-awareness, I guess, that allows you to stop yourself. And I think the thing that's so empowering for me here is that, and this is true for anyone, men, women, anyone in this world, that I think there are times when, more often than not, when we're exactly aware of what we're doing, but we're digging ourselves into a hole, and we just double down and dig harder and faster, and we can't reverse thrust, we can't stop, we can't time out. And this is the big difference here. At least the reasons why maybe we couldn't before had to do with these parochial or these ingrained or stereotypical traditional roles of what it meant to be a man.
You are bang on. I mean, that was the whole beginning part of my story, was, being in that place where I just tried harder. And I was out golfing with a friend of mine, or I wasn't golfing. I was out with a friend of mine, ironically, a South African. And I was playing golf, and I was lousy. And he even said to me, he said, and I was trying to be all cool around him because he's a pastor. And he said, you keep golfing like that, and I'm gonna swear for you, because I was trying to be all cool and stuff like that. And then we're golfing some more, and then we were talking about life and stuff like that. He said, you know what? Life is a lot like golf. The harder you try, the worse you do. We don't let the club do the work. We don't let the organic nature of life play its part. We're trying to be in control, and we're trying to wield our future rather than yield to it. And that's a huge difference. And that's where this place where you see that opportunity, and you find that you need a purpose and a cause in which you can give your life to, in which case you'll finally dare. You'll dare to do that thing. And as we stated before, oftentimes we don't dare because we feel like people are going to tear us down. But rather, if you follow this alignment tool, you will actually notice that people will rally behind you, because they see that it's coming from a place that's not about you. They see it coming from a place that's of generosity, or a place of wanting to serve and to collaborate. Like, that becomes super powerful. So let's take a pause for a second. And so for you, you're a speaker. Your main course of actions from your writing and speaking and stuff like that, you come into COVID, and you've had to iterate. Like, what does that look like? What does that felt like for you? Oh, I can't hear you. You're muted.
Oh, I've never done that. I've actually never done that before. I've never made that mistake before. I was so enthralled, I forgot to unmute, because the dog was barking. I gave my permission. I gave myself permission to just mess up, which is good.
Love it.
No, but I mean, I'm in it right now. The line that I've been using over and over again is, I've never worked so hard and had so much fun making no money in my entire life. Yeah. And and most of that is true, in the sense that I didn't a lot of the stuff in this matrix I see present. I didn't get in my own head. I didn't get ahead of myself. I didn't panic. I just said, this feels right. This feels like the right thing to do. And what I'm proud of, it's a weird little bragging moment, that I did not put the word virtual on my website. I don't even actually know how to change my website, but that's another story. But I just decided I didn't want to become the world's greatest virtual speaker. I felt the current take me in a different direction. And I went with that current. And I feel like I've reinvented myself, and I feel like my life has purpose. And it allows me to have conversations like this, and all the other stuff in my head about, the traditional male roles. They're still there, but they're not dominating me maybe as they might have in the past.
Yeah. And here's something to kind of wrap your brain around too, is everything that's happened in our life is nothing more than tuition. We pay the tuition to get to where we are, to become the man we become. And if you're a woman, same thing for you. And just a little caveat, most of this stuff all applies to women too. It's just I contextualize it for men and put it in a way that they can thoroughly understand. Understanding that all of life is tuition, like everything that you've done to this point, and now you're planting seed into a new fertile soil. And you're iterating your gifts, your talents, your skills in a place that can contribute to people, diving in deep, doing your research on people like myself, and giving them a spotlight and a platform that you're creating for new conversations to arise and new discoveries to be made. And now from this, you can build that into something that's going to be something bigger. And I don't know what that is for you, but it's a place where now people know, like, and trust you, from a place where they're going to want to hire someone to help them finish some writing material, or if they want somebody to speak at something, virtual or otherwise. Like, you are basically putting down a deposit on your character, on your nature, and your generosity. And that stuff has dividends. And this is the stuff that people don't understand. This is that organic nature, in the same way that our world was created to plant a seed into soil, and the nutrients that are gathered around it and the things that it attracts give it life, and that life bears fruit. And our lives are the same way. And oftentimes what happens is we get a place where we criticize ourselves, and we're our own worst enemies. And we start robbing ourselves of nutrients, and robbing ourselves of the sun in the sky and the wind in the world. And we rob ourselves of the nutrients that actually give us growth and a future. And that's not where we need to be, especially in this season. We have to be in a place where we're like fertilizing our own soil and falling in love with our own seed, and knowing that our gifts and our talents and skills and everything that we're going through is for a purpose. And when we get that, it sets us free to yield to what is to come. And when we yield, more things are made possible. It's the difference between gripping and trying to force something, and it's like you're gripping a hose. And the stuff that's coming through that hose is choked off, but that's the stuff that's going to give you your flow. And if you'll just allow yourself to let go, you can step into that flow.
You are watching and listening to Pastor Angus Nelson. You've become the pastor, my friend. The South African has let go of his past and his pastor. I'm not your South African pastor friend. You are the pastor now. We probably could talk for another hour, and we're going to, because we're going to go to the Zoom after show where you get to like interact with myself, with Angus, with Pastor Angus, and continue this conversation. But I'll just give a couple more little plugs for you quickly. You can follow Angus on Twitter. In fact, on all the socials, he's Angus Nelson. You can find out more about him, obviously, at angusnelson.com. You can actually set up time with him. I love the fact that you can just book a chat with you. Go to manofwealth.com/schedule and be enthralled by his wisdom, and see whether there is an opportunity or connection. And of course, you can download the copy of the Manhood Matrix at manofwealth.com/matrix. For those of you, I'm still waiting to see your words. What words don't rhyme? All I got was orange. Surely you guys can do more. I'm going to reveal what those words are in just a moment. But Angus, we're going to get to. We are at the point where I'm going to give you a quote that is connected to our conversation, and then you have to, I guess, see if you think you can guess who said it. So your quote is our goal. It's a big one. Our goal should be not to redefine masculinity, but to abolish it. Who said that? And what do you think about that quote? Should I just tell you who said that?
Yeah, because I'm never going to guess.
You've definitely watched the show. This was Robert Jensen, who former professor of journalism from the University of Texas in Austin. But it's an interesting one. What do you think of that quote?
Context. I want to know what his context is. I couldn't read that and just place a judgment on it because there's too many trigger words in there that I want to know how he defines masculinity.
Yeah.
And how does he define abolish? So is that reassemble? Is that reconstruct? Is that masculinity, the toxic masculinity we've known? Or is it the masculine energy that we bring that complements femininity?
No, I was going to say, he could have just said, our goal should be not to redefine masculinity, but to defund it. And then it would have been controversial. So, Michael Donnelly said, thanks, gentlemen. This has been great. Really appreciate hearing your perspectives.
Oh, hey, Michael.
Always good to see Michael. And Karen asked an amazing question, which I don't know if there's time. Well, you tell me if you think there's time in the final 4 minutes we have. But it was such a good question that I thought maybe we could even address it in the Zoom after show. By the way, for those of you that want to, that have been watching the Zoom after show, today I'm going to switch it over to YouTube. So it will be live on YouTube, or you can actually come and join us in the Zoom room just to try something different as well. But Karen asked, how can moms support their sons to be happy with the men that they are becoming? Such a big question, such an important question.
Well, first of all, I'd say let's definitely dive into that in the Zoom room. But my nutshell version of that, I put my kids to bed, and my daughter and my son, and in particular for my son, I ask the context that I'm going to give it to you, and that is I tell him these three things: I love you, I'm proud of you, and I believe in you. Right? That goes for all of my kids. What I'd say the fourth piece is you have what it takes. There's a book when I went through my divorce and all the stuff, and I got counseling. I was working through my own stuff by a guy named John Eldredge, and it was called, oh gosh, go look up John Eldredge. It's kind of like something heart. And he said this: the number one question that every man wrestles with is, do I have what it takes? And every young man needs to know that they have what it takes, because unfortunately, in our culture, we don't have this transition from boyhood to manhood. There's no condition that says, boom, you are now a man, and this is what that looks like. That has been abolished, if we're going to use that word. And so there's this context where we have to understand and kind of prescribe to our young men who it is they need to become. And they can do that by, how do you want people to perceive you? How do you want to impact the world? How do you want to love others? And give them a mission of what they're trying to contextualize instead of an obligation of what's expected. Because when you give them a vision, they can create it in the gifts that they've been given. If you give an obligation, they have a hurdle they can't cross. They have a rule and a legalism that they don't know how to contend with. Part of this is having them with a mission, because we all seek purpose, and contextualize that, or I should say contrast that with being left to their own devices and living by default. Give them a purpose, and they will seek to accomplish it.
You know, when it's a great answer. And, when I was looking at quotes, typing the word, masculinity, or, some of the things that we were discussing, there are a lot of quotes that come up that are all about boy and man, and ultimately you think of father and son. And I will just ask you for maybe this will be my question in the Zoom after show, which is how important, and again, I think Karen asked this question about moms. What does a mom do, and how much of that answer and the man that they are becoming is connected, endemic, inextricably linked to their father, good, bad, or ugly. And it can be, of course, very complex, because it could be the absence of a father. It could be an absent father. It could be a father that's passed away. It could be an abusive father, or it could be a very functional father. How much of that, of the man that they become, is is their father versus their mother versus something completely else. So that will be, I guess, the teaser Zoom after show. Karen said that makes so much sense. Thank you. Great advice. Well, we're going to move on over. We spoke about pride. This is a different pride. I'm proud of you. I'm proud of, I'm proud to see where you are and where you're going, and that you're helping people. It's been just a true pleasure to reconnect and do it in this, this safe and this very special environment. So, if you final word is yours, otherwise we'll head on over.
Well, as the minister of marketing, apparently, dude, thank you. Thank you for creating this format. Thank you for taking a chance on yourself. Thank you for leveraging people who love and adore you. Thank you for asking for help. And thank you for telling stories that can inspire.
I'm going to say nothing else, and that was beautiful, and I appreciate it from the bottom of my heart. Let's head on over and continue the conversation. Thank you, Angus.
You bet.
Thank you for watching CoronaTV with your host, multiple author, and global keynote speaker, Joseph Jaffe. CoronaTV is the show about hope, positivity, optimism, and if there's time left over, a little bit of marketing. The after show on Zoom starts right now at bit.ly/CoronaTV After Show. If you like the show, tell a friend or two. Please subscribe to the show at coronatv.show. And if you want to get inside news, previews of upcoming guests, and much more, text CoronaTV to 66866 or visit josephjaffe.com/subscribe to sign up for the show's newsletter.
And despite the best ministrations of your wife, you still look ugly.